How hard is it to make a living from trying to make people laugh? Find out today as we take a look at the life of a comedian, right here on Views and Vibes.
I present to you Algebra 2, Foreign Languages, and finally, Biology. Who among you will step up to their challenge?
Me. Yeah, I'll do it. Me too. Sign me up.
Take on the tough classes now. You need them to prepare for college.
先生你好，歡迎光臨，等等先。唔該晒。Brandon.
The trade of comedy is about as old as the profession of prostitution and probably just as dangerous. Imagine going to work every day just to be greeted by hecklers, naysayers, and endless competition. But they do it anyway, often finding ways to fight through the turmoil and bring smiles to our faces and laughter from our bellies. Joining me today to talk about what it takes to make it as a comedian are host of POV with Vic Christian, Mr. Vic Christian, the grand hostess of the new show Bohemian Underground, Miss Ray Devia O'Neill, and the very funny Mr. Kyle Martin. Welcome to Views and Vibes, my comic friends. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Now you just made us into undercover prostitutes.
It's a dangerous profession.
Yeah.
You know, you guys got people heckling you all the time.
I've been raped in comedy before. And it's called guest sex. Take this guest sex. You know you want the time. Take it.
Right.
Now, I always like to start off with, when I talk to artists, you know, whether it's doing films, whether it's musicians, I always like to start off with one particular question. What bit do you wish you wrote or performed? What comic bit?
Oh, wow.
I know for me, just to think about Baby's Kids. You know, I think even though Robin Harris, people may not remember who Robin Harris is. He's been dead 20 years this year. But people will always know Baby's Kids.
And Test Tube Baby.
And Test Tube Baby, right. You know, so what bit do you wish you had written or performed?
I would say Richard Pryor's when he went back to Africa and he stopped using the N-word. I think that was so genius and like one of the best bits I've heard.
Okay. All right.
I'd say Dave Chappelle bit about when is a kid old enough to be considered an adult versus getting like it's about a white girl getting kidnapped versus bringing R. Kelly into it.
What about you, Vic?
I admire all of those and several more. There's not one that I really, I don't know, and I don't want to sound vain. I think that the best one is yet to be written by me.
I don't. Okay, nothing wrong with that, you know, but I know there's always something that captures your attention, you know, and you say, you know, that bit right there made that person a star.
And can I add on too, because Jeff Foxworthy, you know you're a redneck when. I think that is the best.
Right.
Like, if I could have created that, because it's going to go down in
I think that's commercially something good. I mean, today comedy is a lot different than it was.
It is.
15 years ago.
Well, let's talk about that. Why don't you define comedy for us? What is comedy? What's comedy to you?
Comedy is the art form of bringing humor to philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all it is. You're talking about real life, what's behind all the mess that goes on, deeper subjects, and you're trying to make correlations and formulas, and you're trying to get people to take a view at it from your eyesight. That's how I approach it.
Okay. Kyle, go ahead, dude, if you want to answer that one.
I'd say it's your view on a certain part of society, and I guess how you skew it a certain way in an effort to make people find maybe something that's incredibly serious and maybe even off topic and not talked about in society, and making light of it, I guess.
Well, how personal is comedy to you?
I think that's probably the biggest reason I got into comedy is just being able to tell your perspective on certain things and getting that out there.
I agree. But I think the hardest part is to talk about your own personal life. But that's also the funniest stuff.
I think comedians come from a very painful place a lot of times that people don't really know about. That really drives you to express yourself on stage. Because you either have to be a fool or very creative to want to be a stand-up comic. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world to me.
And it definitely is. And you know, it can be a very painful experience to be up on stage and everything. I want to talk about that later. But why is it so hard to make people laugh? You know, it's easy. You can tell a story. You know, you can make up a story. You know, but why is it so hard to make people laugh and be entertaining and doing it?
A lot of it comes from having a commonality. One of the things that I find that have always been hard is that I do a lot of political satire, and in a lot of my jokes I like to say you need to be able to read and think past 10th grade level. And even though we're graduating people technically at 12th grade, most people that we are graduating in the last 15 years aren't able to do that or consistently try to keep that up. You know, it's a commonality. People laugh at what they can recognize and what they can kind of feel or feel a kindred spirit with or something like that. You know, that's why there's different clubs. There's mainstream, urban, there's blue collar, there's all, you know, country, whatever and everything, because there's a commonality in it. You know what I'm saying? Jeff Foxworthy isn't going to rip in front of an urban crowd in Southeast DC. Saying he might get ripped apart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but then, you know, that's a whole nother level. We had a recession, and then people got stuff on their minds. It's hard to laugh, like when you just took a morning after pill or anything that's create your lights out. You know, it's hard, you know. But I think Jeff Foxworthy could do urban comedy.
I mean, I'm urban. I think he could get.
I think so.
I think he could get to the but that goes to a deeper thing. There's a commonality amongst everybody. Blue collar workers or urban comedy, most of those people are hardworking working class. The divisions come from stuff that we see
outside of that.
It's outside of that. It's something that, you know, people have socially indoctrinated themselves and saying, this is my group, this is where I am.
And I think you've seen that in the last 10 or 15 years in comedy. It's gone that way where things have been broken up into certain sections. Like you have a blue collar comedy tour, you have a Kings of Comedy tour, and you have then just like the nerds of comedy or the the potheads of comedy. It's like everything's categorized, but the really famous comics like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, George Carlin, they transcend that, and they can really appeal to just really broad audience.
Now, how do you get to that level? I mean, even looking at the guests here today, you guys, you know, it's a broad spectrum of, you know, the representation of comedians. You know, you have a black male, a black female, a white male. You have all these different people. And when we come back from break, we're going to talk about, you know, what it's like to be on stage and how you overcome some of either your nervousness or whatever when we come back. And we'll be right back after this break with more Views and Vibes.
Now, think about that. Like, we're not pissed that the Vikings are named that because they were around like 1,000 years ago and people aren't still walking around like, the Vikings. No, it worries me, man. Like 1,000 years from now, are they going to have teams like the Taliban or the Nazis? No, it never happened. The Nazis would be awful. They'd be the worst team in the league. They wouldn't have a running back, they wouldn't have receivers, they wouldn't have any secondary. They don't sign any black players. All they got are kickers. They're just hitting like 80-yard bombs on first down. They'd be terrible. They're the worst team in the league. Just being absolutely all. No, I always wanted to be a football player, but I had the body of a 13-year-old boy. Yeah, he walked in front of the camera. Let's say it. What are you, new? Is this your first time, like, on Earth? This is going great. TV.